Hi, I'm Joni Patry, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Well, today I want to talk about something very important that is going to have us looking at the future and what's to come. And what I'm about to talk about is going to be Rahu and Ketu. Here's my book on Rahu and Ketu that I published it was around 2017. And in that book, based on where Rahu and Ketu are transiting, I predicted the virus that started in 2020. Remember, I love to go over all the different placements of when Rahu and Ketu go in and out of a sign. Rahu and Ketu take 18 and a half years to go through all 12 signs of the zodiac. So after 18 and a half years, they come back to the starting position that they were when you were born. What happens when you're around 18 years old? You go through one of the biggest changes in your life, and that's because you're going through Rahu and Ketu are returning back to the positions that they were when you were born. We call this a nodal return. Okay, before I get going with this, I want to remind everyone to sign up for my free newsletter. That way you can get all of my predictions delivered to your email address once a week. Go to galacticcenter.org, sign up for my free newsletter, and while you're at my website, remember to check out all the classes, the shooting stars, become part of our community where we talk about spiritual things, as well as my magazine, Joni Patry's Astrology Insights. It's a monthly magazine and it has so much information. You're going to want to get it for only $9.99 a month. And don't forget, if you want to study astrology with me, I have an online self-paced university you can join anytime. Go to universityofvedicastrology.com. All right, so let's get going and talk more about where Rahu and Ketu are going. One of the reasons why I wanted to talk about it today is that Rahu and Ketu, they have a very erratic motion. And therefore, a lot of astrologers use what's called the mean node instead of the true node, which means that they move the nodes 1 degree every month. So actually it moves, 1.5 degrees every month to be exact. So that's the constant movement if you're using the mean node. It means it's taking the mean motion and figuring out how it moves within that entire 18 months or 18 years, should I say. Because the nodes also, they stay in a sign for 18 months. So they stay in a sign for a year and a half, and it takes 18 and a half years for it to cover all 12 signs of the zodiac. So, but these are the most poignant parts in a chart. I always tell people, wherever Rahu and Ketu are, it's going to speak volumes about what you're experiencing in terms of the changes in your life. And I have often said certain signs that they go in can create catastrophic events. As I well noted, that whenever they went into Rahu in Gemini and Ketu in Sagittarius, that was when we always had a catastrophic event. I've talked about this so many times, but in case you're new to my channel, I went back every 18 and a half years. And before the COVID-19 hit, I said 2020, around March, there was going to be something that changed the world forever. Why? Because Rahu was in Gemini and Ketu was in Sagittarius. And 18 and a half years prior to that was September 11th. I went back 18 and a half years prior to that. And that was the AIDS virus, about 1982. Going back 18 and a half years prior to that, 1963, was assassination of Kennedy. And let's just go back one more time. 18 and a half years was 1945, the bombing of Hiroshima. Every time there's been some type of catastrophic event. So don't worry, we have a long ways to go before we have to go through that again. 18 and a half years from 2020. So we're not going to worry about that right now. But what I am going to worry about is where Rahu and Ketu are right now. Because right now, remember Rahu and Ketu, we use those as planets in Vedic astrology, but they are not planets. They're simply points in space that connect the sun, the moon, and the earth. So when you take the earth and you look at where the sun, from Earth's perspective, revolves around the earth, we call this the ecliptic. And wherever the moon intersects that ecliptic going in its upward cycle, that's Rahu. Where it hits that ecliptic going downward, exactly opposite is going to be where Ketu is. That's why when you look at a chart, Rahu and Ketu are exactly the same degrees, exactly opposite. So they are the determinants of our fate and our destiny, for the world as well as for us personally. And that's what I want to talk about today in this brief talk. So what am I telling you? I'm telling you that right now, Rahu and Ketu, because we're about to go into eclipse season, which happens in October, the nodes stand still. Remember how I told you they have this erratic motion, and if you use the true node, you're simply moving it 1.5 degrees every month? Well, in reality, if you look at where it really is, what happens is they stand still for about 3 months. I use the true node instead of the mean node. So for 3 months, Rahu and Ketu stand still at the same degree. And right now, that's where they are. They're standing still at 0 degrees Aries for Rahu, 0 degrees of Libra for Ketu. So looking at that, that is a very definitive point in the zodiac. I can't tell you how powerful it is. It's called the Aries point, 0 Aries, and it is a powerful reference point of destiny. Interesting that the nodes chose that. Or what chooses it? I don't know. The universe, the great divine cycles of the planets, they know better than we do. But it's stationed there between now till the end of the year. And that 0 degrees Aries is what I call, or what is called Gandanta. First few degrees of a fire sign and the very 2 last degrees of a water sign are called Gandanta. And basically what it means not, but it basically means things are out of control. Let's just face it, that's what's going on. Things are out of control. And we're going to see this happening while the nodes stand still at this critical Gandanta degree where Rahu is, 0 degrees of Aries, between now and the end of the year. It's Gandanta. But then on November 28th, Rahu is going to move into Pisces and Ketu is going to move into Virgo. And there they stay for the next 18 months. From that point on, here I have the dates and what's going on. So we're going to have Rahu move into Pisces. That's going to be November 28th, 2023. And it will continue to be there till May 29th of 2025. So for 18 months, year and a half, Rahu will be in Pisces and Ketu will be in Virgo. And if I had to say, what is the most treacherous signs for them to be in besides Gemini and Sagittarius, where all the catastrophic events happen, I'd have to say it's Pisces and Virgo. And let me tell you some of the things that happened that time period, 18 and a half years ago, and before that it's in this book. And one time was in 1968. Any historians here, that will ring a bell. A lot happened in 1968. And the first thing that pops in my head was the assassinations that happened in 1968. Because first there was Martin Luther King. I believe that was somewhere around March or April. I think it was March of 1968. And 4 months later in June, we had the assassination of Bobby Kennedy, who was running for president at the time. So 1968 was treacherous and dealt with assassinations. What's very interesting, what's going to happen in this time period that Rahu is in Pisces is going to be April 21st of 2025. Rahu is going to conjunct Saturn. And that's what was going on many times when Rahu was, let me explain something. When Rahu hit Saturn, now I'm talking about other time periods, other signs. Rahu was conjunct Saturn, but it was in Libra when President Lincoln was assassinated. Another thing that happened when Rahu was conjunct Saturn, but it was in the worst sign. Rahu was in Gemini, Saturn was in Gemini, 1945 during the bombing of Hiroshima. So what we're looking at is the Saturn-Rahu coming together in this treacherous sign of Pisces and Virgo. And why is it so treacherous? Well, I just told you that Bobby Kennedy and Martin Luther King Jr. were assassinated when Rahu was in Pisces and Ketu was in Virgo. Also, during that year that was going on in 68, it was the largest loss of soldiers during the Vietnam War. It was at the peak, and there was a peak of corruption going on around the world with governments, and there was a total rebellion with the youth that were fighting back. So much went on when it just came to a time when the youth decided, we're not going to war. We want peace. And they kept sending these soldiers to Vietnam, and they were sending them back in boxes. It was a horrible, horrible time. Rahu was here in Pisces. Now, let me tell you something else about the Gandanta. Remember I said Gandanta deals with drowning many times. And when Rahu was in the last degrees of Pisces, get this, remember I said Gandanta gives a feeling of being out of control, but it gives a sense of drowning, and sometimes literally. And it was April 15th of 1912 that the Titanic sunk, and Rahu was 29 degrees of Pisces. Now, another thing happened with Rahu being in Pisces and Ketu being in Virgo, and that was when Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans. This was August 29th of 2005. Jupiter was actually in Virgo at the time, accentuating Ketu there in Virgo. So what do we have? We have a very treacherous time coming up, because what happened before when Rahu was in, and Saturn was there as well, where it's just like where it's going to be coming up here in the year of 2024, we're going to have Saturn conjunct Rahu. And yes, this is going to be treacherous. It is April 21st of 2025, but Saturn will be with Rahu. Let's see, Saturn will move into, Saturn will be in the sign of Pisces by March 29th of 2005. And it will cross over Rahu by April 21st of 2025. Did I say 2005? I meant to say 2025. So let me repeat that. Saturn goes into Pisces March 29th, 2025, and by May 29th of 2025, Rahu will shift out of Pisces and move into Aquarius. But in March, it comes together with, in April, it comes together before it changes. So essentially, let me give you the picture of this. So April, Rahu and Saturn come together in 2025. But what happens is they just pass, and by the end of May, you're going to have where they shift signs. The end of May, let's see, it's going to be May 29th where Rahu goes into Aquarius. So we have Rahu in Pisces from November 28th of 2023 till May 29th of 2025. So it's there for a year and a half. And right before Rahu goes into Aquarius, it's going to cross over Saturn in the sign of Pisces, just like it did in 1968. And also, yes, that's when Saturn, Rahu was together in 1968. And what we have? 2 serious assassinations. So what am I talking about? We're probably looking at some assassinations around that time, okay? While we have Rahu in Pisces and Saturn in Pisces. But really, I'm thinking Rahu in Pisces is the most treacherous of all, especially for storms, Gandanta, drowning. And the other thing is major social uprisings. Major social uprisings, because that's what happened before. And what I suspect is going to be happening is the people like the generations before that fought back for the corrupt governments, they're going to be fighting back. And what I see coming about from all of this are states are going to start separating from the government. The government's getting ready in the United States to go through a hellacious change, a big change. It's a Pluto return. But you're going to find a division of the different states going their own way because they cannot come to agreement, and there's going to be rebellion and death as a result with this. So you get the picture of Rahu being in Pisces and Ketu being in Virgo. It's big. Big things are going to happen. And when I looked at the United States chart, Ketu crosses over Saturn in the USA chart in the 10th house. The government shifts and changes. There is rebellion really striking out. Now, another thing I wanted to do before I'm finished here is I wanted to give you a little feel. I'm going to go into this in a lot more detail in the future for your sign. What you can expect, because if you have an Aries rising or moon, remember I'm talking about the sidereal. Sidereal, do not be looking at your Western. If you don't know your sidereal moon or ascendant, look it up on my website, galacticcenter.org. Go to the free chart calculator. Once you put in all your data, scroll to the very bottom, look for AS, ascendant, that's a sign I want you to look for, or MO, which is moon, that's the other one. The moon is how you feel, the ascendant's what's happening to you. So if you have Aries, then it's going to be a time of health and healing and finishing up old projects, because Rahu will go into your 12th and Ketu will go into your 6th. A lot of issues around the workplace, but take care of your health. That's important. If your moon or your ascendant is in Taurus, then this is a time of changes within groups, friends, and possibly big changes going on for your children. Maybe they leave the house or they graduate, but there's going to be a big change for you in that area. But it's also a time of great gains and meeting a lot of very influential people. If your ascendant or your moon sign sits in Gemini, then this is the time of career changes and opportunities. Rahu's in the 10th, but Ketu's in the 4th. So you could move on account of a job. Something's changing in the home environment because of your work. If your ascendant or your moon sign sits in Cancer, this means that Rahu's going to be in your 9th and Ketu's going to be in your 3rd. So this is a time of traveling, learning new things, going to school, getting educated, and changes coming about for siblings and possibly your father. If your ascendant or your moon sign is in Leo, then this means that there's going to be some deep, dark changes in your life psychologically, because Rahu's going to be in the 8th and Ketu's going to be in the 2nd. So maybe deaths around family members and inheritances, things of that nature. So if your ascendant or your moon sign sit in Virgo, then relationships are going to shift and change, because Rahu's in your 7th house and Ketu's in your 1st house. You don't feel connected in this world anymore, and you're having issues and problems with your partner. Now, if you're a Libra moon or ascendant, then this means that Rahu will be in your 6th and Ketu will be in your 12th. So it is a time to get healthier, you will get stronger, and it's time to finish up old projects from the past. Maybe it's time for a retirement. If your ascendant or your moon sign sit in Scorpio, then Rahu's in your 5th house and Ketu is in the 11th house. This could be a time that big changes and opportunities come about for children, or your creative endeavors really take a leap, and you'll be letting go of some of your friends from the past. If your ascendant or your moon sign sit in Sagittarius, then Rahu's in your 4th and Ketu's in your 10th. There's something about expansion with the home, the family, but your career will change, and you're not going to feel as much purpose, and you need to change careers and professions. If your ascendant or your moon sign sits in Capricorn, then Rahu's in your 3rd and Ketu's in your 9th. This could be a time of new learning, classes, courses, reading, writing, and of course, travels. But you might find there's some issues going on with a brother or sister, and there's a decline with your father. So if your moon or your ascendant sit in Aquarius, then this means that Rahu's in your 2nd and Ketu's in your 8th. You'll be making more money. There'll be more expansion in the area of money, but you might be looking at some deep, deep psychological changes as a result, or maybe someone from the past will pass away. If your ascendant or your moon sign sits in Pisces, then Rahu's in your 1st, Ketu's in your 7th. So you are changing exponentially. You feel stronger, more powerful, but your partner may not come along for the ride. So there could be some difficulty through relationships. So I hope this gave you a big rounded feel for where the nodes are going. And I'm starting this a bit early because they're stationing as we speak right now. We feel it coming. It's changing. The world is changing. And I want you to be prepared for the shifts and changes. that are always happening. So with that, I'll close. Remember, if you'd like to learn more about me, if you'd like a reading, or if you would like to sign up for my newsletter, go to my website, galacticcenter.org. And if you want to study with me, join our community of astrologers, go to universityofvedicastrology.com. Thank you.